It's the SDG Podcast. Before we get started, you can check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com/podcast or find us on all the social medias, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Solution Design Group. Hey, we're here. Welcome. Welcome to the podcast. Podcasters, introduce yourselves. Say hi.
Hi, I'm Chad Jetner.
Hi, I'm Peter Lawrence.
And I'm Kyle Bacher, and joining us today is Danny Lenzelink. He's one of our front-end developers, and we're just checking in with him about the state of front-end development, what's going on, and what's new and cool. And then I know that our actual developers are going to have some deeper questions that I just don't know to ask. So Danny, how long have you been with us? It's over a year now.
Yep, it is officially over a year. Thank you for the intro, and yes, good to be on the podcast. I've been looking forward to this for a while. Yes.
I guess my first question is, from my standpoint, I did like my front end development experience was using a SharePoint web parts, like just Legos. I was a configurator. The stuff I did with JavaScript was taking someone else's JavaScript, doing a little CSS. Like I have very, very low level of experience. So jQuery was like the hot new thing the last time I worked with it. Can you still create accordions? That's my big question.
Oh, absolutely. You certainly can, and I think the only difference now is that the amount of ways you can accomplish that have gone up significantly. You know, there's all kinds of different flavors of UI libraries that are out there, and all with their pros and cons. There's few that I'd definitely like to touch on today. As far as what is new in front-end development, well, there's a lot. Some of it's just recently, and a lot of it's just in the past few months. But definitely good to catch up those who haven't had a chance to see these updates yet. So, I guess the big thing for me as a React guy is the introduction of React 18 and a lot of its features. So, I can just, without further ado, jump right into kind of some of the stuff there that's really kind of getting my interest. I think
what's the big thing?
one of the big concerns generally is when you're fetching data, it's, you don't know how long that's going to take. So generally you throw up some sort of animation, a loader or some sort of indicator to the user that there's something happening in the background.
My favorite screen.
I will watch a thing spin indefinitely. I'll just get hypnotized by it.
Yeah, it's like sometimes in those when you watch the screensavers, you got to wait for it to hit in the corner perfectly. The whole class cheers. Yeah. So as far as that goes, they've implemented something called Suspense, which basically allows you to very concisely just say, okay, when things are loading, show this. When they're not loading, like progress to the rest of the code essentially. So. It's a very concise way without having to do all kinds of monkeying with some context or in larger applications introducing a state management library. So definitely.
You don't have to pretend that the loader is a natural part of coding, or you get to actually have it be part of the page itself, and it just kind of works.
Exactly.
Do you think it works better this way?
I think, I guess from the user standpoint, if assuming they're both implemented, to get the same, I mean, they won't know. But as far as the development experience, I mean, I think it allows, it allows, at least for me at a glance, to be able to more quickly recognize like, okay, this is what's happening in the component, rather than kind of extrapolating like, the 10 to 15 lines perhaps in some cases that it takes to correctly, render the loader under the correct conditions and all that. So yeah, that's a big one for me. Definitely.
No forgetting that one crucial line that makes the loader freeze or
or give you an infinite loader.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, had plenty of those. And then another thing that I found, I mean, if you're using React, you're using state more than likely, and in some way, shape, or form. So now what they've done in React 18 is that they've introduced automatic batching for all state updates that are kind of in the same, I guess, block, or if they're executing, very close to each other, React will be able to identify that and, essentially make it all in one swoop. So this is going to prevent, situations where components that depend on multiple pieces of data that get updated, asynchronously. We were going to prevent random re-renders, just because, 5 milliseconds later, this thing happens, or we got this piece of data, so we need to re-render even though we never finished the first one, So yeah, that'll hopefully alleviate a lot of those concerns.
Yeah, and when we did a project to build a custom homepage that was different depending on who was visiting it, our testing, everything worked great, and then everybody started using it, and then stuff would just stop loading. Parts of the page just wouldn't load at random, and we finally got the right guy to look at it, and it was the web service call that was happening outside of the render.
Yeah.
That needed to happen inside of the render. And he basically moved the bracket semicolon thing down like 5 lines and said, "There's your problem." And I just shook my head. Like, it can't be that simple. So it sounds like this new stuff will prevent that kind of thing from happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Peter and Chad, what's your guys' experience? Have you, I assume you've used React in some capacity at some point in time, whether or that has been that has been back when before the days of hooks or since. But yeah, just wanted to get a sense of your guys' past experiences and any stories you might have with it.
Well,
yeah,
Danny,
I'm more of an Angular guy, but how about you,
Gotcha.
Chad?
Well, I was going to say, do you remember a thing called Microsoft Front Page? That's where it started for me. But no, like Peter, prior to joining STG a year and a half ago, I was an Angular guy a lot, right? And I'm not on the same level as you, Danny. Like, I'm more back end, but I touch the front end when I have to. But we did use a little bit of React on a side gig, pre-hook. Now, post-hook days, I'm living the life. Current project is all React, with a nice Java backend. So that's super cool. Some of the things like I'd like to hear your ideas on is like around testing, right? Like, what's your approach to like testing in general for your React components? Do you have like a favorite tool? Like, how do you go about that?
So yeah, it depends on, I guess, at what point I enter a project, that kind of if I am there at the inception of the project, sometimes for at least some of the core components, some of the development will actually be more like test driven. So, and by that I mean, you actually, in some cases, I've started, with writing the test describing the core functionality of the component, right? And then just get the data working, and then after that, flesh out the UI, and so that might be something I would do if I was starting off on a project. But in general, I mean, my methodology is try to keep it. try to keep it as frequently. There's all kinds of asks that will change, what the front end component looks like. So it's always a balance between getting too specific to where you're rewriting the test for a one-line change, or to have it be too broad to where the test doesn't mean anything. So for me, it's just trying to find that balance. As far as favorite tools, I mean, I tend to, I guess, for speed, favor Create React App, and so that has some of the Jest tooling built in, and stuff like that. So I guess I'm just used to that syntax as well too. But now with some of the other tooling, that's people are kind of moving away from Create React App with some of the Vite stuff. And I think that might have a little bit more. They're not locked into Jest only. So
that brings up an interesting question. Like, React has been, from my hearing about it, not actually doing anything with it personally, but just hearing about it, it's been one of the most fluid framework type things. You had React Redux, and then sort of moving away from that model into another model. I can't even remember the names of it because they change, I don't know, every 6 months, just to confuse me. But they've really changed a lot of architecture in React, and I know that Angular and Vue have gone through some of the similar things. Everybody's like, oh, look over there, that looks shiny, let's do that. How do you keep up with all the different changes? Do you just keep?
Great question. Man, it's kind of I don't, I guess, have like a set routine to keep up.
What's the pace for React? Like, is React on a 6-month cycle also?
As far as I can tell, that's a good question. I looks like for the most part, October 20. It looks like a major version every year or so. You can expect. So yeah, it looks like for this past version, it took them a little over a year, but yeah, in general, I'd say that's
so not too crazy fast, but fast enough.
It feels, for guys like Peter and I, it feels insanely fast, right? Like, I'm a Java guy, Peter's a .NET guy on the back end.
Yeah.
And our core technology, like the base of our tech stack, moves. Oh, Java's going faster these days, right? But like,
everything's going faster. It has to.
Yeah, well, no, it doesn't, Peter. Like, it'd be really cool if we just said, you know what? We're good, guys. Like, we nailed it. Let's stop right now.
What can't we do?
Yeah.
Is there anything we can't do?
Yeah. All of it. You can't do everything that you haven't done today. Just stop. Just frickin' stop. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I know, like the .NET versions, I mean, how long were we on .NET 2.0 and then 3.0 and then 3.5? Because it changed every time a Windows, release came out. They updated the .NET version. So it was, a long time for a while, but then Core happened and it's all over.
So the perception for guys like us is that the JavaScript landscape is incredibly rapid, like the turnover, what you developed a year ago or 2 years ago is going to be obsolete, if you pick it up today, which isn't really the case, right? Like that's a little silly, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's some, merit to that. And the one thing that I will kind of stick up for JavaScript is that they've gotten a lot better at not pulling the rug out from under you, not just like suddenly making core features not compatible with future versions. So that's I applaud for that. Them for doing that. At this point, I think, and even just outside of React, just tooling in general, I think it's more just there's such a wealth of options now, and there's just to stand out among the front end development ecosystem in that space. I feel like you need to have some sort of edge, whether that be just an excellent product, or just I think that's been the case for some of these other topics I have here. But I think we're seeing we're seeing the high amount of competition really produce some really good products. So a wealth of options, to be sure, but there's some really good options too among those. So definitely,
Nice.
but it is moving fast. It is moving fast.
Indeed. I mean, obviously from your standpoint, React is the winner of the three, right? The three biggies. And I mean, I remember Knockout, I remember Mustache, I remember a lot of other funny named things that existed back in the day. And
Mustache.
and that day wasn't that long ago, which is really funny. But these three contenders have seemed to be at the forefront. Is React taking over?
So the three you're talking about are React, Angular, and Vue, right?
And Vue, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
I read today. I read that React is like #1 most used.
Was that from React.com or?
It was from Bill React himself. Yeah, on Twitter.
Yeah, he puts it right on the front.
I mean, it's funny.
I just believe everything I read on the internet. So
that's right.
It's
when I think back to when JavaScript was created over a weekend, right? Back in the day.
Yeah.
That is strange for guys like me, and I would assume Peter and maybe Kyle, like knowing what JavaScript used to be when it was first kind of unleashed upon us, and then seeing what it's become, right? From this thing that we used to control blink tags to this thing that, you could build an entire, you could write the back end in JavaScript. You could write the front end in JavaScript. You could write integrations in JavaScript. For whatever reason, you would do that. Like, it's neat to see how mature it's become, and not just like the language itself and the frameworks around the language, but the tooling around it, right? Like, as a Java guy, I'm sure you've got this, Peter, but as a Java guy, I've had Maven and Ant and all these supporting tools around it to build, collect my dependencies, compile all this stuff, and now JavaScript has that same stuff, right, Danny, with like Yarn and whatever else.
Yeah.
Yep. NPM. Yeah. So like, for me to call something like JavaScript like super mature, it's not just the framework and the features, it's all of that other stuff that makes building a project relatively easy. Well, not easy, but going from zero to something.
Comfortable. Yeah, you can feel confident that it's going to run and that it's not going to be like, oh, well, we just changed that, so it's all broken, and oh, we're still working on the language. We don't have math yet, but we're coming out with math soon.
So as all this stuff has grown and become more complex and more capabilities, and introducing the cloud to be able to integrate and tie into different things, are there like more opportunities to specialize in certain areas of front end development?
I really think so. Yeah. And not just for different of course you're going to have different specializations across like the most popular frameworks. But I think it's opened up the fact that a lot of these newer frameworks, such as Next.js specifically, I'm thinking of, that allow you to have kind of some control over backend functionality too. It's encouraging, at least from what I've noticed, devs who have been historically completely front end to kind of dip their toes into trying to experiment with a little bit of back end stuff, and maybe making a full stack app. And what I think has been really beneficial is that, again, it's all in JavaScript, right? So you're not learning a Python Django backend or something for a React front end, which is totally doable. But it's nice to be able to just seamlessly transition back and forth. So that's been a factor as well.
Yeah, that's hilarious, because for the longest time people have been migrating to being front end specialists, right? And I will only do JavaScript. I only do this one. Now I only do React. And oh wait, never mind. I'll actually do the middle tier in the back end too if they're in JavaScript as well. And it's amazing just to watch all that growth.
Yeah, I'm a UI guy. I don't really get into the data piece and the web services, and I want to make that font bigger, and I want to make this button do this. But I've seen that. I've seen people that don't have that like data, that back end knowledge, that are able to like work on a project and handle enough of that front end stuff to where they're adding value, they're a valuable team member, it's a good skill set. And then there's people that have been doing this forever that like know it front to back and upside down. And where do you see yourself on that spectrum? And it's probably better than you think.
So you're asking where do I see myself kind of in on the spectrum of like only front end versus only back, or kind of, yeah. Well, I mean, depending on at what point in time you ask me that question, my answer would be different. I'd say right now, it's in the middle area, slightly, more leaning more towards front end. And I guess that's come from not only learning a few other backend frameworks and other languages other than JavaScript, but also, dipping my toes kind of a little bit more into defining my own API routes and server components and all that with using Next.js and React. So yeah, I mean, I see myself kind of in the middle, but definitely more towards front end. I don't really have a goal. I don't really want to be necessarily at one point or the other, but I just want to, be able to tread effectively in both sides of the line. So, yeah.
Yeah. I wish I could tell you what language I'll be writing when I retire, but I can't. Because
you kind of just got to go where the action is.
I haven't written the same language for 25 years. I wish, but
I can tell you it will be Java because I mean for me, not for you. You won't. That'd be weird. That'd actually be kind of fun, but no, I will be reading Java until I retire.
It wouldn't surprise me if I was doing Java when I retired either, because they're all around and they all work, right?
Danny, since you started writing code, since you've started in your career, and you've been kind of a JavaScript guy for most of your career, right?
Yep.
All right. What did JavaScript and what did the entire ecosystem, what is the one thing they screwed up? Like, what's your one pet peeve? What's the thing that you hate most about it?
And so how they handle dates and times, I really don't. The native implementation is not great. Now they've since people have of course identified this need and have developed packages like Luxon, and I think that's like the newer version of Moment.js but people have solved the issue, but helped. But yeah, the initial implementation is really bad. It takes a bit of digging if you're kind of new to the language to just get a basic formatted like ISO string, or just YYYY -mm-DD, just to get that format it can be difficult. But
I have experienced that. Like, what format is being returned, and then what do I have to do, and then it's what time zone.
Right. Yeah.
Peter and I are actually going to have an in-depth conversation about this in a week, and we'll invite you back because he's got a .NET perspective, I've got a Java perspective, and it'd be great to have you for that.
Just date format, like
just time.
A whole podcast on time.
One of the things that I deal with, like, for example, I've written an app that, hey, our day of the week starts on Monday, and doing date math when your day of the week starts on Monday presents an entirely new set of problems that regular people wouldn't think of. And the best way to get around that is to set the locale to France. because the cheese eaters start their day on Monday. Like that's how their weeks are defined. Like that's their ISO standard, is that their day of the week starts on Monday.
And you mean that in the nicest possible way?
Absolutely the
for
nicest possible way.
French
Yeah.
audience.
Cheese. Yeah.
Goodness gracious. Yes.
I think cheese eater is a compliment.
Yeah.
Cheese is good.
I mean, yeah.
But that's hilarious that choosing France makes everything function better because somebody's done a whole bunch of work to make France work rather than make first day of week Monday work better, right?
Well, yeah, and it's not even that somebody really spent time on it. Somebody, it's just the international standards for daytime and blah, blah, blah. But we're drifting from Danny. We'll save that gold for that podcast.
I do want to say that I did accidentally buy a French keyboard.
Oh, the Azerty.
And it took me like about 6 hours to notice why isn't it was confusing. It was
you look
so
down and just
confusing.
Be like, sacre bleu.
Yeah.
Zut alors.
Oh man. All my comics, all my Sunday morning comics coming to the front now.
Yeah.
Excellent. So with the cloud stuff, just moving forward at such a rapid pace and so much happening out there with AWS and Azure and Google Cloud, how much have you done where you're tying into that stuff? And is there anything that stands out as something cool, new, and awesome?
So I guess from the areas that I generally touch on they're more often than not really concerned about kind of where they're deployed and stuff like that to a certain degree. I mean, this of course this is just assuming applications with not millions of users and all that. But as far as one thing that's really cool is that they released these a lot of AWS has it, Google has it. The hosting service companies have this product called like edge functions. Some of them call it something different, but basically it allows you to write like a small piece of logic, and instead of having that logic be hosted on some sort of like big centralized data or server farm like far away from the user, these functions are deployed like essentially as close as possible, like to minimize latency to the user as possible. So I mean, we're talking like a few milliseconds to execute some automated task or something like that. So nice. That's basically what that means is that we can essentially use that in our applications to make certain functionality just feel like so snappy for the user. And I guess the applications, I haven't really leveraged it to its fullest by any means yet, but I'm just thinking like very quick updates, sending UI, updating a UI within milliseconds after they take an action, like stuff like that, to really make sure like this app is fast. That's something cool. And I guess with the cloud, that wasn't really cloud specific, but it was kind of made in a sense available by kind of the how ubiquitous cloud technology is nowadays.
Having worldwide hosting at your fingertips makes it a lot easier to bring it closer to your users. So do you think React's working icon now, they've come to the party too late with release 18 and showing the busy icon that don't need it anymore because everything's so much faster?
No, I don't know if it's too I mean, they could have been earlier, that's for sure. I just I think there's, for the people who are already so comfortable with it, it's nice that they're that's among the options. But
yeah. Database calls and all the backend services are still going to be slow as heck all the time. So we're always going to need that little pinwheel in some way, shape, or form.
Good thing Al's not here to yell at you for that, but
I don't think I know Elle would agree with that. I think I'm going to ask her right after this if she'd agree, but I'm pretty sure she would say it does kind of push the problem. You keep pushing the problem around, right? Like, okay, now the performance bottleneck is, the user's web browser because we're doing so much up there, or now it's back to the backend services again, or it's the middle in between. Yeah.
There's definitely been a huge shift with pushing. I mean, things that you kind of client server-ish back in the day, right, have now come full circle, and now you push a whole bunch of React code onto somebody's browser, and a lot of the functionality is running right locally at their desk at as fast as possible, right, or as fast as their machine. And thankfully, browser developers have pushed that envelope as well.
I do think, like, with modern frameworks, and I don't know if you agree or disagree, Danny, but like you do have, like, front end developers now have more of an opportunity to get involved with things that have traditionally been back end concerns, like integrating with Oauth is one of the big things. Is there's certain Oauth patterns that are almost entirely handled on the front end, right? And then even things like AWS Lambdas, you could write Lambdas in JavaScript and all this stuff. Like backend stuff, we kind of touched on Node a little bit, but like your skill set now is a lot more than just, oh, we need to write an accordion in the browser. It's I need to write the accordion, and then I have to integrate with Azure AD, and then I have to integrate that with a Lambda function. And then I've got to toss that token back to like a gateway or an API gateway or something, right? So like you're doing not just browser development, you're doing full stack, right?
Yeah, I notice. I've got close friend of mine who I went to high school with. He actually recently switched careers, and he's now he entered a coding boot camp, and I've kind of been helping him along with that. And yeah, that right away I noticed that, kind of looking at like the ahead for their curriculum and stuff. It wasn't just centering divs 101, and like stuff like that. It was actually how to set up Express and Node, how to like set up a React project, and with these popular frameworks and stuff like that. So it wasn't just yeah, and this was specifically for like web development too. So yeah, I was relieved to see that they're kind of starting instead of having the person learn just the CSS and HTML and stuff like that, and then learn the JavaScript later, introduce them to programming concepts early on, and then supplement those teachings with the stuff they'll also need, like CSS, JS, all that. Yeah, I'm glad to see that's the route that's being taken. I personally agree with that, but yeah, I mean, how did you guys learn back in ye old days?
Well,
Curious.
I remember when the first text-based browser came out. So, that we've come a little ways from that, doing a lot of straight boring tag-based HTML, and then getting into modern, blended pages with Cold Fusion and active server pages, which are things that no longer exist, or no longer exist as they did back then.
Wait, is that true? ASPs are gone?
Well, gone is probably too strong a word, but no longer tightly supported, I guess I'll say. But just the amazing changes that have come full circle, and like you said, this curriculum of introducing the programming language at the same time that you're introducing the UI elements, I think is super important, because I don't think technically you could still write a static web page, but why would you?
Are there still times though you have to go back to the basics? Is there stuff that it's like, yeah, I could do this in React, but if I could also do this really easily in HTML5, do you need to know the basics? Do you have to have those fundamentals down?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the the choice isn't really nowadays. I feel like it's not like choosing the React versus only HTML5. For me personally, it's often come down to, okay, do I use this UI or CSS library to kind of accelerate development, or do I just accomplish it with CSS and JS, or like a built-in solution? And of course, there's pros and cons to both of those. The native solution, of course, being you're not bringing in extra overhead and dependencies and whatnot. And so, I mean, some of those Material UI and some of those UI libraries are heavy, but yeah, it depends. So it's all about need and scalability too. I mean, if you're looking at a project with 20 plus pages, 50 plus components, it's a lot of times you might get some benefit from using Material UI. You can programmatically share stuff. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff you can do with that. But yeah, just maybe like a 2-3 page Bob's just basic website. Yeah, I think you're you might want to consider a more basic approach.
I just use SharePoint for those things. Just kidding, Kyle.
SharePoint. You can build React apps that run within SharePoint. There's a whole machinery behind that. But then sometimes React changes, and then your page is broken, and then you got to go back and tweak something. I stay away from that. I like to make things as simple as possible and to stay within the lines. But sometimes you gotta have that stuff. Like there's just stuff you need to do that's custom. So I'm just gonna call Danny whenever that comes up.
Yeah, it's hard to build
bag.
Amazon.com with straight HTML tags.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Danny, what's coming up that you're excited about? Like, is there any project, any open source thing that like you've heard whiffs of and you're getting excited, or is it just enough to stay on top of the changes in React core itself and not really worry about something until you have to worry about it?
I think the way I usually look at it is I mean, every once in a while I'll see something new and shiny that really is completely different that I want to jump into. But I think my mind naturally gravitates towards like what's how could I guess further refine the skills that I have. So I'm looking, when I discovered Next.js, that was a huge thing, because I mean I was all about React, and discovering that just made it that was a very exciting discovery. I guess I don't really have any super exciting like front end specific projects that I'm looking to get in on. I was watching a video the other day, and this is kind of unrelated, but about this machine learning algorithm that can basically take any text and make original art from it. They're calling it DALL-E, so like DALL-E. I guess it's supposed to be like Salvador Dali, but like a robot, like Wally. I don't know. But they're basically trying to. I was really thinking like maybe there's some way to leverage that to, like, I don't know, like spin up your own stock photography, or you can leverage that to spin up like assets programmatically, customize like people's avatars like based on that kind of thing, like have them input 5 adjectives or whatever that describes them, and then like spin out something like that. That'd be really cool to just kind of play around with. I think that has some really interesting applications, but totally unrelated to front end, by the way. But that's something.
It did make me think of I had we're building an application, and we're building some graphs into it, right? And I had completely like I had to think about graphing libraries in quite a bit. And I just happened to go out and see like what those D3JS guys were up to these days. Holy smokes, the stuff you kids are doing in the browser now with that stuff is unbelievable. Your Dolly thing made me think of like in JavaScript, they're building like pixelated art that like you can build this gorgeous. They have an example of a picture of Obama out there, all done in JavaScript, all done in SVG coordinates, and all that stuff. And like it's just part of their gallery. Like here's what's possible. And I'm like, man, I just want a little line that goes up and down and up and down. And I want to say like, hey, 5 means it's here. And if you could make it red, that'd be cool. But you guys are doing like just amazing stuff in the browser now, and on mobile too. Like I don't want to just say it's a browser. Like there's, and that's what it used to be, right? JavaScript used to be, I'm writing JavaScript. Okay, well this guy's using Netscape Navigator, and that's going to work there. And I'm going to write a different set of JavaScript for IE and blah blah blah. And now nobody really thinks about that anymore. I don't think, right? You don't, do you? You don't think of, oh, this is for good, like right? Because you just assume it's going to work, which is one of the biggest changes in my head. When I think of JavaScript code, I used to think, oh my gosh, that's going to be so delicate. Because we used to have to worry about that. We used to have to worry how it's going to, or tell our users, you guys can only hit this in this version of this browser on this time of day.
Right. IE 9 or above, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. When you hear client, must support IE, that's when you're just like, oh boy.
Yeah.
But
that's a red flag.
Yeah.
There's always that one app that they're still using from 20 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah, they're just clinging.
I wrote
on
it, and and it only uses IE4 specific JavaScript and ActiveX components dropped in.
Oh no.
So with security becoming greater and greater concern year after year,
No idea.
how does that impact the front end and what you're doing with that stuff?
Well, I mean, I guess there's one. So the one thing that's like very, it's awesome, but also concerning is how codependent and how we're building on top, how much we're building on top of each other. Like all this open source technology that like, this is used to build this, which is used to build this. Like you were talking about security, Kyle. If there's a vulnerability in like one of the lower, if there's a crack in one of the low bricks in the pyramid, that's not good. Like the whole thing could. So that's when you look at and you really see this with a React project, but you look at the package JSON and specifically the package lock.json, which kind of tells you like the sub dependencies. It can get kind of scary because you're like, oh man, am I building with solid slabs of stone like a pyramid, or am I building a house of cards right now? Like what is it?
That was a thing in your world recently, wasn't Danny, where some dude
absolutely.
Actually, like he had a package that was being pulled in. I forget the name of it, but it was a foundational package that a lot of other JavaScript libraries were based on. And I think he just got mad one day and he's like, you know what, I'm going to release an update and it's going to break literally everything. And he did it kind of as not a joke, but more of a political statement about like, you know what, quit using my stuff, pay me. Right.
Yeah.
And then found that it broke so much of the stuff built on top of it that, it actually caused a huge discussion to happen around open source and specifically these types of patterns. Were you impacted by that at all? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know. I was not personally impacted, but yeah, that's it's tough to definitively stand on one side or the other. Because like on one hand, yeah, you definitely want people to be paid and just for their work. On the other hand, it's like I could see I don't see people acting honestly all the time. I feel like there's going to be some room for like people doing acting kind of viciously like that or maliciously, where it's like, oh, you didn't pay me exactly what I want, then I'm gonna cut this off and it's going to impact. So it might be a slippery slope, but I think for the most part it's going okay now. But yeah,
you are when you pull in open source projects, you are kind of extending your circle of trust to an awful lot of strangers that you kind of, fingers crossed, hope have the best intentions in mind. And you also hope, oh man, I hope this guy doesn't have a bad day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because all it takes is one guy to have a really, really bad day And then, so I don't know that I'm doing anything because it affects me too, tangentially, because we pull in open source stuff in our Java projects all the time. And we haven't really changed how we do that, our approach to it, but we are a little tiny bit more skeptical. Like he did open eyes and, make folks realize, hey, you should actually pay attention to a lot of what you're pulling into your projects.
I think the idea is this altruistic give and take of let's all make each other better by making the tools better, and many hands make light work. And then you end up with sometimes all give on one side and then all take on the other. And that can make a person bitter if you've given so much and it's foundational to a whole industry. It's you could feel jaded. I see being able to feel jaded about that. I feel jaded about a backpack I didn't get like 10 years ago. Like I remember everything. I hold a grudge. I can't imagine having something I built like just gave away be the core of like half the internet.
I mean, that's kind of the social contract with open source, right? Like you give it, you put it out in the world, and then with the assumption that nothing, it's just going to be out there, right? And then you find out that it does, actually become the foundation of a lot of important projects. And then, I don't know, hopefully a lot of those folks get hired because of it. I mean, that's part of it, is you get a gig or something else. But yeah, I don't know. It's caused me to rethink a couple of things. Not really, because I don't want to work too hard. What about, well, Peter, you're all Microsoft, right? Like,
No, I'm not all Microsoft. I'm
Easy.
take it
I
back.
always tease you about that.
Well, and even Microsoft has open source libraries too. So, and
What?
yeah, they had a huge push 5 years ago, and it's
Was that
it's
.NET
hung around.
Core?
Well, .NET Core is open source. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
knew a thing.
Hey, but just having those libraries out there. But on the other side, there are free open source tools that are getting better about going through crawling those libraries and finding those concerns and those errors and things like that. So, like every thing that we do, it seems the good guys and the bad guys are, taking steps each moment of time and getting further ahead. So
The arms race. Yeah.
Things get better, things get worse, then they get better, then they get worse. And hopefully you don't get impacted by the things getting worse one day. And, it's really about keeping up, right? These whole problems started when we started the internet a long time ago. And, passwords used to be pretty simple, and they've gotten a lot more complex to the point that you need password managers, and it all builds from there, right? So, but I do think that, with open source and the tools that are coming along for Node and NPM and all of those libraries to get checked and verified and keeping, everybody's keeping track, everybody's helping everybody. It really does work out better than it would have the other way, right? With no open source.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like if you had to categorize it overall, I think for as far as like from a user standpoint, like from like a defense standpoint, I think the technology has helped the users protect themselves, but on the main caveat there is that they need to like having things properly configured and set up is becoming so much more important because I mean even just one small the people who are making these attacks are very smart, and they're going to figure out if there's the smallest misconfiguration that they can take advantage of, or in some way exploit that's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of a lot of developers would agree there's been an increasing need to try to like be conscious of the surface you're exposing yourself of, the attack surface, I guess, as you will,
Yep.
for your project. So yeah, a lot of stuff to be concerned about.
We've joked about Bobby tables before, right?
Oh
Bobby
no,
tables
Bobby
and
tables.
SQL
Little Bobby
injection.
tables.
So
Yeah. Oh no.
so we're never that far removed, but everything gets better, right? More complex systems have different problems, and sadly we still have users involved, right, who set their passwords to their birthday or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And
Should I not have done that?
everybody blushes. Just kidding. But that it's still the easiest way to get into a system is to go through a user, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why all the security people sprinkle thumb drives around parking lots and call up people and send urgent text to say the CEO needs $500 right now. He forgot his wallet and he needs to pay for lunch. Like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Here's $500. Wait, let me think about that. He's sitting in his office. How did he forget that?
Yeah. And now we're all like, we have cell phones, so we're sitting at a bar. Maybe we had a lot of, they get the right guy at the right time. Anybody, you can think that you're never going to be part of it, but yeah.
I've stopped thinking that a long time
all of
ago.
the post-disaster donation sites that pop up, and time of day, time of the year, like all that stuff. They're like fine-tuning those attacks, and 95% of cyber attacks are social engineering attacks.
Right.
Now, you just give it all away. So if anything is causing you to have any kind of panic or fear or sense of urgency, well, don't do it. And hover like the wind. You gotta hover over everything. See what is, and if you didn't order anything, you're not getting a package. You don't need to check the status.
Oh yeah,
from the
I've seen
text.
that one. I've seen that one before.
Hey, okay, so Danny, I have maybe one last question before we come to parting thoughts. Is there anything that you're doing today, like in your tech stack, right? So Peter's .NET, I'm Java. You're predominantly React and JavaScript. Is there anything that you're doing today that when you started your career, you had no idea you'd be doing? Like, I'll give you I never thought I'd be writing Java code for like cross-platform-ish Java code for mobile devices, and that being an actual thing that actually works well, but here I am. Right?
Yeah. I think my vision of like my development job in when I was in school was here are the requirements handed down to you from up on high, basically, and like you're just just go code monkey, little go type. But one thing that I never thought that it would be like like a lot of times it's more of just like a conversation, and just like it's just yes, you are interfacing with computers, tricking basically rocks into doing math, but you are also maintaining relationships with people. So I guess like the reason I bring that up is because at least for my for some others I know, like it's a good path to go for development, because specifically, a lot of times you can just stay in your own lane. You're kind of doing your own thing. But I really have come to realize that to really excel, it's so important to not just make sure that you're writing the absolute cleanest JavaScript or whatever, but to really make sure that you're actually growing as a developer and not just as a coder specifically. So yeah, because I came into from school, I was like, oh yeah, I built a computer. What else can I do with it? And like, here's my here's my nerdy interest. Let me just be on my computer the whole time. But I'm glad that I was wrong, basically.
That's a good answer.
Awesome.
Holy crap, that's a really good answer.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be like, yeah, I'm doing VR stuff in React, or I did a hologram
Not yet.
or something. Okay, it's coming. I promise you, it's coming. But that's a great.
Yeah.
It's a great point. Requirements are suggestions more than anything, and working through those with folks from the business and building those relationships is massive. Like that's a bigger part of your job than knowing how to construct the right if statement.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I have no better parting thought than that. So should we call it?
Let's call it.
Let's do it.
Excellent. Thanks, Danny.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being on, and look forward to hopefully many more. Thanks again to everyone, Peter, Chad, Kyle.
Sure.
Thanks again.
Gotcha.
Excellent. Say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.
Hi.
Take care, and thanks again, everyone.
Solution Design Group is a digital product consultancy in Minneapolis. Check us out on the web at solutiondesign.com or look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Solution Design Group.